This video has been brought to you by DataVinci Analytics Agency. In this video, we are going to see how to implement Facebook pixel tracking through Google Tag Manager. So what are we going to cover in this video? We are going to cover how to implement the Facebook global site tag. We are going to cover how to pass custom events to Facebook. We are going to see how to implement the view content e-commerce tracking. We are going to see how to implement the add to cart e-commerce tracking. We are going to see how to implement the checkout e-commerce tracking. And we are going to see how to implement the purchase e-commerce tracking. So let's start then. Before moving further, I would like to invite you to join our free group on Facebook, the Digital Optimization League. It's a group dedicated to digital analytics. We cover various topics like digital analytics implementation, conversion rate optimization, data visualization, and of course, reporting and analysis. So looking forward to meet you here. So the fundamental requirement to install the Facebook pixel on the site is that you have the Facebook pixel ID with you. All right. If you do not have the Facebook pixel ID, so how can you get that? So when you access a Facebook business, then you will be shown a list of accounts, right? So you need to choose the account for which you want to install the Facebook pixel. So when you choose the account, so for example, I've chosen the DataVinci account, you will be shown something like this. So you need to choose your ad account. Then you need to go to the settings, then data sources, then pixels, and then choose the pixel for which you want to do the implementation. If you already have a pixel, if you want to create a new pixel, then create a new pixel, provide the details and get the pixel ID from there, right? So for example, this is the pixel ID for which we want to do the implementation. So if you click on it, then Facebook allows you to easily copy it. All right. So once you have copied it, okay, now I will put the link to this particular document in the description box below. So this is a documentation by Facebook which provides the code that needs to go on all the pages of the site through which you can implement the Facebook pixel. So let's just simply copy paste this and go to our Google Tag Manager. So in Google Tag Manager, simply go to your tags, click on new, create a HTML, custom HTML based tag, right? And here you will paste this code, okay? But there's some slight modification required, which is very easily guided here by the code, where here you need to put the proper Facebook pixel ID, right? So this you can get from here. So just replace this and here as well, right? And since this is the base code, so this needs to fire on all the pages, right? So the triggering would be very simple. We will set it to fire on all the pages. So page view, no conditions, all pages. Let's call it Facebook base tag. Okay. And then it's very simple. Just go and publish this thing, and then we can go on the site and validate that whether it has been properly published or not. Now to validate the implementation, there is a Facebook Pixel Helper extension that you can get from the App Store of Chrome. I'm not sure whether it's available in other browsers or not, but in Chrome it's very easily available. So just look for the Pixel Helper extension, install that, and go to the site on which you want to check that whether the implementation has been done properly or not. So if you open Pixel Helper and refresh the page, right? So here it will indicate that whether the implementation has been done properly or not. So you can just validate. It also gives you the option to copy this, so you can copy it from here and cross check that whether this is the right pixel or not. In case of the basic page load pixel, you will see this page view call, right? So this is just suggesting you that the global Facebook base pixel has been properly implemented on the site. Now let's look at how we can implement custom event tracking for Facebook pixel, which is very easy as compared to the other tools. Alright, so we are back in Tag Manager, and as I mentioned earlier, that implementing the custom events with Facebook is very easy. You just need to call this function FBQ, right? And the parameters that you need to pass over here is the type of call that you're making over here for FBQ, and in case of custom events, it's always going to be track custom, right? And then you need to pass the name of the event. What is the name of the event? And this is totally up to you. This is entirely up to your business logic what you want to pass over here. So here what I've done, I have passed a track custom that needs to be passed with all the custom events, and then here I have passed 50% scrolled, right? And what we are doing over here, we are going to track a custom event every time a user scrolls at least 50% of the page, right? So here I have used the Google Tag Manager's scroll depth trigger, right, which will fire on when the scroll depth threshold contains 50. Okay, so this is how I've set the trigger. And if we save this and publish this and go to the site, we'll just scroll to the page and see whether this fires or not. As I said, it's very easy. You don't need to do anything. Just use FBQ, track custom, and name of the event that you want to fire, and set the trigger according to your business logic. So we are back on the page. Now I'll refresh it, and the first call would be for the page we called, which is firing fine. So the 50% scroll event has been triggered, and as you can see, it's working fine. Now you can just see this in the event manager of Facebook business account, and whatever you want to map this to, if you want to consider this as a micro conversion and you want to optimize your campaigns around it, you would be able to do that in your Facebook ads account. Now to track add to cart, we are on the official documentation by Facebook. So this is the code that needs to be placed on the site if we want to track add to cart. So over here, as you can see that this is again the FBQ function, right? And what are the parameters that we are calling over here? The first one is track. So this will be a default static thing that needs to be put, and then add to cart needs to be passed whenever we are passing a cart event to Facebook. And then these are the parameters which are related to the product which is being added to cart. So over here we have the content name, which is simply the name of the product, content category, which is the category of the product, content ID, content type, what's the type of the content, the value, which is the price, and then we have the currency, right? So either you have these things available in your content management system such that they are exposed and can be picked by the tag manager using some kind of JavaScript, or you will need to create the codes and find how to get these values on your own. Okay, so I'm going to take an example of normal site. I'm just going to Soul Store, just giving this for an example. It's a site which is available out there on the internet. They're not my clients or nothing like that. The example is just to show that if we have to pull in these values, then how we'll do that. Okay, so let's start with content name, right? So if let's assume that we are on this page, this particular product, and we have to get the content name, then how can we do that? So here it's very easy. Content name would be the name of this particular product, which can be picked both from the URL, if you look at it over here, or you can pick it from here. So if I just inspect this, right, so this is the content name. So if I copy the JS path and just paste this code, and then I do an inner HTML, inner text, right? So the output is this. So what we can do, we can create a custom variable, right, in Google Tag Manager, which with this code, right, and that custom variable will return the value of the products on the product pages. Okay, so this is like how we can get the content name, right? The next one is the content ID. Now this one gets tricky, and we need to find out some logic of how we can get the content ID. This can be different for different sites, so you will need to look at the code. At times the content ID might not be easily exposed, so you will need to do some kind of logic. So maybe what you can do is that you can use this, put a JS code and convert this to a number, and then pass that number as a content ID, right? But the problem over here is that if you want to match that content ID with your backend, then you will not be able to do that. So you need to have some kind of ways through which you can expose this, right? So over here what I have done is that if you just do this, okay, so if I click on add to cart, so okay, so let's select this and click on add to cart. Right now, if the Google Tag Manager has already been implemented and the click event has been enabled as triggers, so if you go and do data layer, okay, so you just need to locate for the last GTM click that happened. So the last GTM click is this one, which is data layer 48. So if I open this and go to data layer 48 and expose this, right, and then open the GTM element, right? So if I click here, then I get a lot of information, and then I can look for something that is particularly associated with this particular product. Right now, here my assumption is that this can be the content ID, like 3C whatever, right? And let's look for something else if that can be the content ID. Here also we are getting this as a content ID. So to validate that, if you already have the access to the site, so you can validate that whether this particular product is having this content ID or not. Or the other way to do that is that if some other tool has been implemented that is passing the e-commerce data. So right now if I'm looking at Google Analytics, right, so this one is product detail views, and then this is for add to cart, right? So the product ID is different. So the product ID is 169912. So what we can do further, if I copy this one 161192, and if I go to the page and look for this particular ID, right, so here we can see that this particular element is containing that, right? So this is the element. So we have identified that one element. So there, it seems like there are 3 elements on the site which are having this thing. Okay, so what we can do, we can just look for the element that is containing this information. And so for example, if I do this and inspect this, right, and copy this particular element, right, so maybe we can use jQuery here. So this is a code through which we can get a particular attribute of an HTML element. So we are using the ID over here, and if I do this particular value, then this is not coming because I have not yet selected anything. Now let's try this again. Now this is coming. Okay, so if I do this, then it is also coming. So these different variants are having different IDs. So as you can see that this particular code is exposing the ID. So now we have 2 codes with us, one to get the content name, one to get the content ID, right? Let's look if it is exposing the content type as well. Yeah, so the content type is available over here. So we can create a condition. We can create we can copy this element. Okay, so I have clicked on it again. Now this is the element that we have already discovered. If I do a context, then dot title, so this is giving this thing, right? And then we can create a data element for this thing. And if data element or variable, and if this particular variable contains the string t-shirt, we can say that this content is of t-shirt. So we need to have some kind of business context that what are the various categories that are available on our site, and based on that we can create the code and get these values. So referencing to this again, we need the content type, which will be a product over here. That's fine. The value and the currency. So value is also very easy to pick. It should not be a problem. So just inspect this and just copy this, copy selector, or copy the JS path. And then if we do this, if we do this and do an inner text, so that gives us a string. Now we need to get rid of the sign, so just split this, right, and we need to split this by this. So now we have 2 values, so we can pick a second value, and we need to convert this to a number, so multiply this by 1. And here we have, so we have the third code also ready. The currency, that also you can have the context, and here it will be a rupee currency. So this is how we can create the 5 variables and pull these values. So let's do that in Google Tag Manager and practically see how we are doing this, and create the variables and then create a tag to pass these values to Google Tag Manager. All right, so we're now in the Tag Manager. So let's start first by creating the variables. So just in the Tag Manager, click on variables and click on new. And here I prefer creating custom JavaScript types variables. So the syntax for this is that all custom JavaScript variables need to have a function, and they need to return something. Okay, so let's assume that this one, let's start with creating the product name or content name. So content name, right, and here just put it as content name, and then we'll put it something here, but in the end we need to return con name, so it will be return con name, right? So let's get the code again for getting the content name. So if I just refer to the codes that we have put over here, right? So this is the code. So you can just copy paste this one, go back to a tag manager, and just put this as a code, right? Now this will get the value for content name. Now repeat this thing for getting the content ID. So do this again, a custom JavaScript, calling it content ID. Same thing, needs to be a function, right? And we'll make it con ID and return underscore ID. And let's get the code for getting the content ID. So getting the content ID, so this was a code, right? So you can just replace dollar with jQuery, because sometimes dollar does not work within Google Tag Manager interface. So this will be a content ID. Let's call it add to cart as well, because the data layer variables for different events would change. So this one is the content ID for add to cart. Similarly, content name for the content name would be same for add to cart as well as view content. So just name it add to cart and slash view content, right? Just save it. Okay, now next was getting the content category. So, or we can also just use content price. So new variable and content price for add to cart, and this will be same for your view content as well, right? So just do this, custom JavaScript, same thing. Con price, return con price. Okay, then currency we can keep it as a default value. So I'll keep until unless you have an international site, but in most cases you can work with default value as well. So this will be a constant, and the constant would be INR, Indian rupees, right? So what is left? We have to look for the category, right? So how we got the category? This one. So I'm skipping the part for creating the code for the con category. I've already created this code, so this is the code. Now here there's a slight change. So what we'll do first later is concat, and there is a code called index of. Okay, and index of finds a particular string in a substring in a string, right? So here let's assume that you have the business knowledge that this will contain the string t-shirts. So here we will search for t-shirts, right? And right, so concat.index of t-shirts, and what this does is that it locates the string in substring in a particular string, right? So this is looking for t-shirts in concat. So it will return a number, the location of that substring. So if this is greater than -1, that means it contains that particular substring. So we can create another variable called concat _2. Okay, and initially we can just name it none. Okay, so if concat.index2 is greater than 0, then we can set concat underscore 2 as t-shirts. Okay, right, so we can repeat this. Let's assume that there are hoodies. So if the first one does not work, then it will move to the next one, right? And then so here it will be hoodies, right? Eventually what we need to return over here is concat 2, right? So now we have all the 5 variables. We have the content name, we have the content ID, we have the content category, content price, currency, right? So these things we already have. So now if you have to pass this in your code, so how we'll do that, we'll go to tags, create a new tag, and it'll be a custom HTML, refer to Facebook here, right? So this is the script, right? So just pass it in a script. Okay, now here we can call the data variables that we created by using simply this syntax. So this will be content name, this will be content category, this will be your content ID, this will be content type, which is going to be product only, and then this will be content price, right? And sorry, this one does not need to go in quotes, sorry. And this will be the currency. You can just call that variable or pass INR directly over here. Okay, so now since we are doing this for add to cart, so you will create an event such that it fires upon a successful add to cart, right? So for this, if we go to the site and if we click on add to cart, right, let's refresh this, just wait. Okay, now let's click on add to cart. So you see that this thing came, please select a size, right? So there's a very easy way to solve this. You remember that we had created a code for product ID, right? So you can see this thing that product ID will not have any value if you have not chosen anything over here. So we can use this as a validation logic. Okay, now if we click on this thing, right, and then if we look at GTM or just inspect this, that if we inspect this, so you can just take this, so copy the selector, right, go back to Google Tag Manager, trigger, and it's going to be a click event. So all elements, some clicks, and some clicks, the click element matches selector, matches CSS selector, and just paste the CSS selector. Okay, now there's an additional condition that we put over here, and the additional condition is that the content price, sorry, the content ID for add to cart matches regex, right, and it has at least one value. So we need to have at least one value over here. So if you do this thing, then until and unless content ID has been set, this will not work. So if you call it add to cart, click and save it, right? So this is how your add to cart will work. Okay, so you just need to simply save this and submit this. Okay, if you have done this properly and you have access to the site, now this is just a random site that I've picked on the internet because I want to showcase how it can be done, but let's assume that we have done everything right over here. So if you would have implemented everything right over here, you would see in Pixel Helper that add to cart would have a green tick and it will show you the values, right? So whatever values you are passing, content name, content type and other things, they will start coming over here. Okay, next we can look at view content, which is similar to add to cart because both of them usually involve just one product. Okay, so we can reuse the variables that we created for add to cart, some of them, and for some of them we will need to create the new variables. So let's just look at it. So this is not something which is entirely replicable, so you need to do this on a case by case basis. I'm just giving examples over here that if you also come across a similar website, then how you would create the variables in Google Tag Manager and pass those parameters to the Facebook Marketing Pixel. So if we look at view content, what do we need? We need content name, which I think can be used from add to cart. We need content category, which can also be used. Content ID is something which in this case, where we are taking this one as an example, we will need to figure out it cannot be passed using the existing add to cart variable. Content type can also be used, value can also be used, and currency can also be used. So the only thing that we are left with is content ID. Okay, now we saw that content ID is getting generated when user is interacting with one of these sizes on this particular site, but by default the user has seen something. Okay, in this case what we can do, we can just take the content ID of the first option that is present over here. Okay, so like here the option that is available by default is triple XS, so we can just inspect this one and take what's the content ID for this one, right? So if we do the same thing, just copy the JS path and then make it $.attr value, right? So this is a variable that we can create, right? And then we can create the variable in Google Tag Manager just like we created in case of add to cart, right? And again create a custom script like this and just go here, create a new tag. So by now you might have already guessed what I'm going to do, but just want to revise it so that your understanding is further solidified with how this thing would be done. Okay, so just this thing, and here again you can just call the variables by the same logic that we did in add to cart, like this. Just call the name of the variable. If you create a new content name, content ID, so call that one as well. Everything else will be same. The triggering over here would be in case of page loads, because content view is mostly involved in case of pages, right? In most cases there can be some customizations which can be dealt on a case by case basis, but here what you can do is most of the product pages would have something which is common in their string. That has happened with most of the e-commerce platforms. This is particularly common in case of Shopify. So what you can do is, if you are creating a trigger, so here you can say that the page URL, right? So that one contains product. Okay, so then that becomes very simple. So the view content and add to cart is pretty easy to do. Again, if you have implemented this properly, and if you go to the site and you reload this page, then here you would see view content with all the parameters that you are passing. See, the view content is getting passed. Okay, so now let's move towards checkout, which can be different from add to cart and view content, because checkout can involve multiple products. So how would you create an array and pass that to Facebook would be something interesting to learn. So we are now looking how we can track the initiate checkout for Facebook Pixel, right? So the instructions for initiate checkout on Facebook Pixel have not been very clearly provided in the Facebook developer documentation. All right, it's at a very high level, and there were not enough examples which were there for add to cart or purchase for that matter. Right, so I came across this site. It is digishuffle.com, and they have put a blog, and they have put an array that we can use as a reference over here. And this is the structure of the data layer for Facebook that we can create, and then using this we can pass the data to the Facebook pixel. Okay, so what do we have here? We have content IDs, which essentially would be the SKUs that are part of our cart. Then we have content type, which in our case would be product. Then contents, which elaborates upon the SKU IDs. So we have SKU name and the quantity and the price, right? The overall value, the currency, and then the number of items, which is the number of unique items over here. All right, so I went to the site, right, and this is the code that I found that we can use to find the total number of unique items. So it's very easy. So if I just inspect one of them, right, and I go till this part, right, so this one. Okay, so if I just copy this, copy JS path, and then if I paste this, and then I do, there's a code called child element count, right? So the child element count would show the number of children that are present in this particular element, and that is coming as 3. Okay, so this will be the value that we are going to pass here, right? Number of items. So if I just copy this, right, and let's open Google Tag Manager. So here we are creating the custom script. Right, so let's say that var item count is equal to the code that we created. Okay, so here this code, so simply paste this, right? Then the other thing is price. So var price, let's make it total. So price should be very easy to pull. You can just look at this element and inspect this one. Okay, so here is it coming, and if we just copy this, right, and then inner text, right, and then we have to split and take the first one, that is actually the second one, and eventually multiply by 1. So we have a price. So this is very simple. Okay, next, what do we need? We need currency, which is very simple. We can just put INR here. Now comes the tricky part, where we have to create the content, right? So for this, what we have to do is we have to create a for loop, and then first create an empty array, and then keep on filling it, right? So how to create a for loop is what we are going to look at next. Okay guys, I am abruptly pivoting from what we were doing earlier. Okay, and here is where we need to take a call, that whether we want to continue to fight this battle, or do we need to take the help from the developers, right? I would personally feel that this is the time that we need to take the help from the developers. Now, what is the challenge that I am facing over here? Now, if you look at the syntax that is there by Facebook, as well as if we refer to this particular blog, right? So in content IDs, what we need to pass is SKU. Okay, it's not the product name, it's the SKU. So we can pull the value of the price, we can pull the value of value which we just did, we can pull the number of elements which we just did. But the problem is that on this particular page that we are considering as an example, whatever is available as the name of the product. There is no information as such regarding the SKU of the product, right? So if I just inspect this, okay, and show you, then if I am looking at this one, right, so there is no information around what product is this. I can expand this and keep on expanding this. Now I can also check the window, right? So that would show me all the JavaScript variables that are present over here, and which I have already done, right? But I did not find anything that can help us to get the IDs. So there is already a data layer getting populated. I looked at that one as well. So if I expand this, so that is also not getting passed. The product array is empty over here. So in this case, we would need the developers to pass these values into the data layer, right? And once they do that, then we can create the data layer variables, we can create our elements, right? We can create an array, and then we can use this one to pass the value to the Facebook pixel using simply FBQ track initiate checkout, right? Again, referencing back to this blog, so we simply need to pass this value in the script FBQ track initiate checkout and this data layer variable. So this data layer variable is very easy to create. You can as it is pull the entire data layer object, right? So for this you need to do nothing, it's very simple. Just go to variables, right, and create a data layer variable, and here simply pass the name of the data layer object. So here it would be simply custom data FB. In this case, in your case it can be something different, but the syntax would be like this only. You need to pass the content IDs, right, which will have the SKUs. You need to pass the content type, which in e-commerce would be product. You need to pass the content, which is again going to be an array, then overall value, total unique items, and the currency. So let's assume that the name of your Facebook data layer is also this thing, custom data FB. So here you will just create it as custom data FB, and here what they have done is named this data layer variable, right, as this. Okay, so if you have done this arrangement, then if you go to your tags and create a custom script for initiate checkout, so right, and then here you can just pull it, right? This is done. If you do this properly and then fire this on your checkout page, so page view, some pages, page path, let's say, and here contains cart, so simply page path contains cart, and save this, right, and just name it cart. And then this will take care of sending the initiate checkout data to Facebook. Alright, since the Soul Store has been so supportive in the creation of this video, as a token of our appreciation, we are going to place orders on this website. And this will also allow us to pass the purchase event to Facebook. How we can do that, we'll also see that. Alright, so let's do it then. Okay, so this is the thank you page of the order confirmation, right? And things got a bit interesting over here because on this page there is as such no detail of the orders or the products that I have placed in this particular order. The only thing that we can pick from this page is the order ID, right? Then in such scenarios, what would one do? So what you can do, you can look for all the variables that are present in this particular page, and to do that you need to simply type in window in your console, and this will expose all the variables that are present, right? So after looking a lot, I found this particular variable, right, which is part of the data layer which the developers might have been creating, right? And if you expose this one, right, so this one gives the transaction ID as well as the details of the orders that have been placed, right? So this is how an array has been created, and it is it contains all the order IDs and the respective prices that are part of this particular order product array. Okay, so if we look at this, the Facebook pixel that has been firing on this page, so you can confirm that these are the same product IDs which the developers are passing here, right? So using this, we can create variables and then pass the data to Facebook in the Facebook pixel. So let's see how we can do that. Now again, looking at the Facebook documentation for pixels. So for purchase, it's very simple. Again, FBQ track purchase, and then we need to pass the value, currency, contents. Now value is the overall value of the order, right? So here we have individual values, so we need to create a way to sum them, right? And then we need to pass the overall sum over here, and here then we need to pass the individual IDs. So let's see how we are doing this. So we are in Google Tag Manager. Now let's start with getting the overall price. So for this, we'll go to variables, and then we'll click on new variables. We'll click on a custom JavaScript, right? And here we will put the code for the custom JavaScript. So custom JavaScript variables need to have a function, right? And this is the code that I have created. So we know that this one is a data layer variable, right? And is in the 9th. The index of this variable is 9. So we can create this, copy this entire code that I created over here. So, and first we need to define the length, right? So for length, sorry if it seems somewhat clumsy. Yeah. So first what we have done, let's understand this code. So I have defined a variable called len, right? And what len is doing, it is finding the length of this one, order products, which is present in CRTO data layer 9, because we need to find out how many products are there in your order. So once we have length defined, right? So in our case it was 4. So what I have done over here is that I'm running a for loop, right? And there's one more variable which I have used over here as PRC. So var PRC, I'm defining it as 0, right? So here then PRC gets updated with each iteration of the loop, and we can see over here that if we expand this, then this particular array here, the price variable is recording all the prices. Okay, so this is how with the for loop we can calculate the overall price, and at the end we can return PRC. Okay, so this one will return the final price. So this becomes our order value. Now let's see how we can get the IDs of each of the products. I've already created the code for content. I'll just explain to you what I have done over here, right? So as we know that content is supposed to be an array, right? With the square brackets, we can make that out. Okay, and this is the syntax. So here in Tag Manager, first what I've done is created an empty array. Okay, then I've created a variable called len, right? And len is simply calculating the total number of products that we had in the order, right? And then again, using a for loop, we are populating content one value at a time, so 0, 1, 2, 3, and we are updating the value of ID with the ID that is being passed in the data layer as we saw on the page, right? So this is the ID, which is the product ID, and similarly we are updating the quantity as well, right? Both from the object from the JavaScript that we have picked. And finally, once after the for loop completes, the content variable will be ready, and we will have a JavaScript variable that we can use in our marketing pixel. Okay, so after this, it's very easy, a cakewalk. So you just need to create a custom JavaScript variable, custom HTML variable, which will be of type script, right? The code is very simple: track, purchase, order value. We will just call the variable that we created as order value, and then currency is static, INR. Contents is just a variable that we created right now. Content type is product. Okay, this can be made to fire on purchase event, so which we have validated on this particular site is getting fired when the purchase is happening. All right, now what we are doing is not the optimum approach. The best way is if you can request the developers to create a fixed structure, and you can provide the technical specifications to the developer and pass the values that are required in your marketing pixel in those things, right, such that you can directly pick those. So if any changes happen to the structure of the page, then this code etc would not affect those, right? So best is to request developers that this is the structure of the object that we need. They will pass it, just pick it from that data layer object and configure your variables and pass them in the script like this. Okay, so let's recap what we have covered so far. Okay, so I need to confess I did not expect the video to be so long, but I think we covered a lot of things in a lot of detail, so this should help you in establishing your knowledge around implementing Facebook pixels through Google Tag Manager. So what did we cover? We covered how to implement the global site tags, we covered how to pass custom events to Facebook, we covered how to implement the view content e-commerce tracking, we covered how to implement the add to cart e-commerce tracking, we saw how to implement the checkout e-commerce tracking, and finally we saw how to implement the purchase e-commerce tracking for Facebook. All right, so I hope you liked the video. In case you did, then please don't forget to subscribe. All right, I wish you well. Take care. Bye.